All right. Right. So thanks to everyone that registered for the webinar, and for those who couldn't make it today, don't worry, we are getting this session recorded. So we would be sending you a link to the recorded session after this, so you can view this at your own convenience. And for those who joined, thank you so much for taking the time out. My name is Sriram, and I'm part of the inside sales team here at Doc 365. So just a brief introduction about Doc. So Doc 365 is a contracts lifecycle management solution, which is built on Microsoft 365. So it integrates with Microsoft 365. It's deployed within your organization's Microsoft 365 tenant. So you have complete control over all of your data and your access to all of the documents or contract documents that you have inside of Doc. We've been in business for the last 20 years now. We work with hundreds of clients across the US and Canadian regions. Now, this is the second instance of our webinar series. The theme is SharePoint for legal teams. Again, this series is primarily intended for organizations that have Microsoft 365 licenses at their side, and who wish to make better use of their investments in Microsoft 365. So as you must be aware, you get a bunch of different productivity tools with your Microsoft 365 licenses. So the basic ones are typically, your Microsoft Word, your Teams, and then you also have access to SharePoint. So depending on, different licenses or subscriptions that you have, even if you are a small organization that have subscribed to a business license, there's a, a high chance that you also have access to the SharePoint product from Microsoft, which comes along with your Microsoft 365 licenses. So I'm sure you're aware of what SharePoint is. So SharePoint is Microsoft's document management system where you can securely store all of your important documents inside of different folders, and then be able to give out the right access to different users that might need access to those folders or documents. Now, this session is in continuation to our last webinar, where we focused on how you could start leveraging SharePoint for your contract management needs. I mean, if you are an organization that hasn't already invested in a full-blown contracts lifecycle management solution, so you could really start small, start with those basic steps of using SharePoint to store and manage all of your contract documents. So those who haven't seen the last webinar, we would be happy to share the link to the to that session. We do not want to share this at this point. We'll wait until we finish this session, just so you're not distracted. But then, just to give you a very high level insight into what we discussed last week, because that's where we would like to continue from. So when you are on SharePoint, I'm sure if you've already used SharePoint, you're familiar with the user interface of SharePoint. So you could go ahead, access SharePoint, create a new SharePoint site, decide whether you want it to be a communication site or a team site, and then choose from different templates that you have there. We could start with a small blank template, and then go about giving it a name, name it contracts or whatever you want to name it. And then it creates a blank SharePoint site with that name for you, which you can then, start populating with different folders of documents or your contract documents that you wish to, store and manage in here. Now, once you've created a new document library or a folder, that houses all of your, let's say, fully executed documents or contracts, typically would look like this once you have all of those folders uploaded. Now here you can add more columns based on the kind of different metadata that you would want to track or manage in here for each of these folders or the contracts that are housed within these folders. I'm not going to get into the details because it would be a duplication of what we had shown last week. But then, here's where you can start off. I mean, let's say if you are currently using an Excel spreadsheet to manage the metadata, such as your expiry dates, your effective dates for your existing contracts. So you could bring or do all of that. So you could do away with your, your local or decentralized Excel spreadsheet and then start creating a spreadsheet-like view by adding more columns, and then depending on what kind of data is it that you're trying to store, choose from a set of predefined fields, and they all show up here, just like you would see on your Excel tracker. And then you could also set reminders based on your expiry date. So let's say if you have a new column that's tracking all of the expiry dates, which you can manually input for each of these contracts. Then you could also set up a reminder based on these expiry dates, based on which the platform would start sending out notifications that are due on these expiring contracts. Now, this was what we had covered in our last session, and I would highly recommend that you go take a look at the previous session if you would like to get into the details as to how you could start using SharePoint to be able to store and track some of your important milestones pertaining to your contracts. Now, the next big challenge that legal teams face is, when it comes to managing internal approvals for their contracts. So let's say, somebody who's creating a contract, who's probably from sales or from procurement, depending on whether they're working with a customer or a vendor, and they want to go ahead and create a contract and then send it through the right channels for internal approvals before it gets sent out to the third party as part of the external contract review and negotiation processes. So you can also bring in those automations within SharePoint. So here, once you have that tracker-like view, so you could, integrate this with Power Automate. And, if you've invested in Microsoft 365, whether you have a paid version of the Power Automate license or if you're still using the free version of it, you still would have access to some of the basic flows that you can really configure in order to, go about creating approval workflows inside of SharePoint. Here, when you click on integrate, it shows you the different tools. So you just have to click on Power Automate, create a flow, and then you can have access to all the different flows that you may have already created. Now, there are also certain pre-configured Power Automate flows or templates of Power Automate flows that you can choose from. So Microsoft has already made it available. So depending on what kind of flow or integration or automation it is that you're looking for, so you can make use of some of these pre-configured or preset templates. Now, if you're looking for something that could help you with approvals, you could simply search for approval, and then it would show you all the different pre-configured or available templates that you could use for your approval process. So for an example, if you wanted to start an approval process and send an email on Microsoft form submission, or an email notification after an approval is received from SharePoint, or more basic flows such as requesting your manager for approval for a selected file that you want them to review before you share it or you process it further as part of your contract lifecycle management. So you could choose the template that makes more sense based on the kind of requirement that you're looking to cater to. And then once you have all of that, you just click on continue. And here it takes you where you can create or customize the flow based on different conditions or criteria. Now, this is where it gets more complicated. And at this stage, given the demographics of the attendees, that we expected for today's demo, and since most of them are from legal, who, probably would have limited to no technical expertise when it comes to, managing or creating such flows. I mean, if you have your internal IT resources that can help you go ahead and create such flows or automations using these available templates, I mean, you could still explore setting it up within SharePoint. Now, this is where we have built Doc, to kind of address the basic needs and the basic user friendliness that most of our legal folks would expect from such systems. Now, instead of having to go through all of this, we kind of made creating workflows easier within Doc. I'll just get to Doc. So just to give you a brief overview before we get into the details. So this is again built on SharePoint. Um, it's using the SharePoint SPFX framework. So all of your data is still inside of your SharePoint list. All of your documents that you create or manage through the platform is inside of your SharePoint document libraries. So, I mean, Doc is a platform. It's not hosted, at our side. We are not storing any of your data. It's going to be deployed inside of your organization's SharePoint. So, we're going to create a blank SharePoint site collection, and that is where, Doc would be deployed. So it's sitting on top of your SharePoint, but you still have complete control and access over all of your data and still can manage, access based on how you want to set them up. So once you're on the platform, the contracts tab is where you can see a similar list view of all the different contracts that you have, have different custom columns that can track different levels of data. So this would show you all of your existing contracts, who is it signed with, what kind of contract it is, what status these contracts are in, when were they created, the effective dates, expiry dates, and so on and so forth. It's kind of, giving you easy access and visibility into all the contracts that you have within the organization. Again, this is also permission-based, so it uses the same levels of authentication as your SharePoint. So you can really set up permissions in a way that you restrict access to these contracts to certain individuals only. And even when they have access to specific contract that they ideally should have access to, you can really set them up as read only or edit only permissions too. Now, it's also easy for you to create a new contract within the platform where you can pre-configure all of the different templates for your contract creation. So let's say if you you have a contract template within the organization for all of your NDAs, or you have a template for your master services agreements, you have a template document for your statement of works and so on. So you really can go about configuring them inside of Doc. So there's really no limit to the number of contract templates that you can store in here. So these are basically Microsoft Word documents with placeholders in it. Now, depending on what kind of contract it is that you're trying to create, you just go ahead and access that template, and then this takes you to a form where you can capture any information related to that contract that you're planning to create. Now, this could be, I mean, since you're using or creating a contract using one of your own templates, so these fields could be, some of those data that needs to be populated inside of that document template, populate the relevant placeholders within it. Or it could also be, some contract metadata that you wish to track pertaining to this contract that you're planning to create, such as your expiry date or your review dates, your notice to cancel, your notice to renew, and so on and so forth. So these forms are completely customizable. So depending on what kind of information you would want from the end user to be captured on the platform during a contract creation, you can set up those fields and create your own forms. Now, I'm just going to get into the approvals in a minute, but before that, let me just go ahead and create a contract so that we can continue with how approvals are managed within the Doc platform. Now, this one of the primary fields that you would see is the party name. So this is nothing but the third-party organization that you are trying to create a contract with. So it could be a customer, could be a vendor, a supplier, or an employee too. Now, if you've already captured or created a profile of your third party. So let's say you have a bunch of vendors that you regularly work with. So it's easy for you to bulk input all of your vendor information into the party tab. So it makes it easy for the user that's trying to create a contract to choose the right party through this drop-down option. Now, if it's a new vendor or a new customer that you are bringing onto Doc and then trying to create a contract with, you could also create a new party on the go, in which case the fields or the form would expand slightly more to capture some of those basic information on that organization. So it also creates a profile of that organization as the contract is being created. Now, you can also integrate Doc with your third-party applications. So this is just one of the examples. So if you're using a CRM, that already has all of your vendor or your customer details, or an ERP that already captured all of these information. So you can also import a party or an organization information when you're creating a new contract. So it also syncs, the contract back with the CRM or the ERP once the contract is created. So you've got those integration possibilities too with Doc. Now for this instance, let me just go ahead and use something that's already created. So here I'm going to select something from the drop down and then go about filling in the rest of the fields. So since I already have this organization profiled within Doc, so I also have the associated information, which kind of makes it easy for me to, go ahead and select from these drop downs. So I can go ahead and put in the effective date for this new contract that I'm creating. If you have a project that needs to be associated with this contract, so you could also, go ahead and choose a project name if you've already created it within the project section. Now, here's where you can set the expiry date in terms of, accessing a calendar. It could be a date picker field, or it could also be in the form of frequencies that you want this contract to, expire within. So let's say if this contract is set to expire in 3 years. So I just set the frequencies there and it automatically captures the expiry date. I also have the option to, set it to auto renew, in which case, I can go ahead and put in a frequency and the number of renewal occurrences I would want for this contract. Or if it's something like an evergreen that doesn't have an expiry date, I could simply, set it up to be unlimited. Now I can capture, the review date. I mean, if I want to go ahead and review this contract, before it expires, and then, decide whether I want to go ahead and cancel this or renew this. I can also set up a notice to renew date or a review date based on what your expiries are. Let's say I want this to be my review date. Again, these are all customizable fields, so it's not a default form that you're working with based on the kind of information you would want in here. So you can bring in your own custom fields too. Set up a notice to renew date. And then if I want to associate this contract that I'm creating with an already existing one, I can also choose to do that. So let's say if this is a statement of work that I'm trying to create for an organization or for a project, and then I'm already aware that there's already a master services agreement that exists with that party, then I can just go select that party once again. This would then show me all the different contracts that I have with that organization, and then I just choose a relationship, which again, are customizable options. Once I have all of these information within the form, I just go ahead and hit save. Now, what the platform is going to do is use a predefined template that you have for this type of contract, and then it's going to create a new agreement for you. And once that's created, you can see that any information that you may intend to populate within the respective placeholders of that template document, that would already be done by the platform. So this is a preview of the agreement that you just created using the platform. At this point, you've created a contract entry or a contract record within the platform. And here you can go to the contract details tab. Now there's quite a lot you can do in here. This is going to be your workspace for this specific contract. And under the documents tab is where you would see the actual document that you just created. Now, Doc also integrates with Microsoft Word, so you're still, accessing these contract documents inside of Word environment. So you have all the existing features and functionality that you're familiar with within Microsoft Word. So you can continue to, make any additional changes or edits to the document or the base templatized document within Word. Now let's get to the topic real quick, which is workflows. So this is where, we've brought in the ability within the platform to go about sending these documents through different workflows. Now, just going to take a quick second here, switch to these settings. So I just wanted to show you how you can go about creating different workflows. Now, within the settings tab, an admin user, is the one that would have access to the settings tab. And pretty much everything that you see on the front end can be managed through the settings. So for each of these tabs, there's a corresponding settings function too. So within the contract, you can access the different workflow templates. So if you wanted to go about creating a new workflow, you could simply put in a template name, put in a description that would guide the user as to what this template should be used for. And you can decide whether you only want one of the approvers within this workflow to approve or all of the approvers to approve. And then you can choose who the approvers are going to be for this workflow. So it's integrated with your Active Directory, so you can easily search for folks within the organization through this space. So simply searching for an individual, and as long as they are part of the Active Directory, it would show up on the list. So you can go ahead and put, just one or, as many approvers as you want within that specific stage. You can also set up a due in days, as in, within what timeline you would want these approvers to, finish the approvals. Now, the workflow could have just one stage in it or could have multiple stages. So you can just simply go ahead and add new stages and add corresponding approvers and reviewers to each of those stages. And once you create this workflow, it is all accessible under the workflow templates. And this is where, it's feeding the workflow templates when a user is creating a contract and trying to access the workflow tab. Here, depending on, the different contract types that you work on, you can pre-configure certain workflows based on the workflow type, based on the contract type. So let's say if it's an NDA, so you already know that it has to go through a specific workflow. You can pre-configure that so that the user doesn't have to manually select a workflow. Or if you want to give them the ability to choose from a wide, variety of different workflow templates that you've already created as an administrator. So this is where, they can access all of those different templates. Depending on, what kind of contract type it is, if they know what template to choose, they can simply add that workflow. Now you can also set up workflows based on, rule-based flows, as in depending on the kind of contract that is being created or the location that this contract is created for, or based on a certain dollar amount, you can also get the platform to auto-recommend the right template when the criteria is matched. So these are different ways that a workflow can be triggered when a contract is supposed to be sent in for internal approvals. Now the user would simply click on Start. Now the approver or reviewer within this stage would receive notifications from Doc, which would carry a hyperlink in it. And the approver can follow the hyperlink. It takes them right to where this action item is. The typical notification that they would receive is that, hey, so-and-so user has, requested for your approval on this specific contract. And then this is where you would be led to if you were the approver or the recipient of that email notification. And you can come back in here. You can see any notes that the user may have left for you, as in what exactly is required in terms of an approval or a review on this contract. And you can go to the Documents tab as an approver, choose the document, access the document, review the document. If there are any changes to be made to the document itself, the approver can go about making those changes. Or if it's all good to go, they can simply come back in here and provide their approvals. Now, if it's not ready to be approved, they can either reject it or request for more information. Now, based on one of these actions, it's going to trigger a notification to the user that started this workflow, stating that the approver has approved the stage or rejected the stage or has simply requested for more information before either of these could be done. So this is how you could manage workflows within Doc. This is just one of the features that we have within the platform. But since today's topic was to show you how workflows could be set up and how workflows could be leveraged inside of Doc. We're going to limit today's session to this function. But then if you would like a personalized demo or would like to, jump in much more detail as to what the platform is capable of when it comes to managing your entire contract lifecycle process, you can simply head to our website. It's www.mydoc365.com, and you can book a personalized demo. Or, we would be sharing a link to the calendar if that's more easier for you to go ahead and, set up a demo or a session with us. We would be sending that link, which is accessible within your chat. Right. With that, we come to the end of today's session. We would be having subsequent sessions on different functionalities that you can leverage through Microsoft SharePoint and then also through Doc, because Doc is built on SharePoint Online. Right. I'll look forward to meeting you again in our subsequent series. Thank you so much for your time. Have a good day ahead. Bye-bye.